The massive alien ship appeared over New York City on a quiet Sunday morning. Its sleek, silver surface reflected the sunlight, casting dancing patterns on the buildings below. Unlike the dramatic arrivals seen in movies, this ship made no sound. It simply hung there, waiting. Within an hour, the United Nations Security Council gathered for an emergency meeting. Military forces worldwide went on high alert, but they received strict orders not to make any aggressive moves. The world held its breath, waiting to see if this was first contact or humanity's last day. A message arrived in every major language on Earth. We come in peace. We represent the Galactic Council. We need to speak with your leaders. The ship's delegation landed on the UN headquarters roof 3 hours later. The aliens looked almost familiar. Most had 2 arms, 2 legs, and heads, but that's where the similarities ended. Some had blue skin that sparkled in the light, others had 4 eyes, and a few floated instead of walking. Ambassador James Chen watched from the meeting room as they entered. After 30 years in diplomacy, he thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. The alien at the front of the group, who introduced himself as High Counselor Zach Still, was tall and thin with silver skin that seemed to move like liquid metal. His 4 eyes blinked in different patterns as he spoke through a small device that translated his words. "We have been watching your species for some time," Zach Still said, his voice calm but filled with worry. "We come with grave concerns about Earth joining the galactic community." The room fell silent. This wasn't the usual first contact scenario anyone had expected. No trade offers, no cultural exchanges, just concern. "What exactly concerns you about humanity?" Chen asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Zach Still touched a small device on his wrist. Holographic images filled the air around them. They showed scenes of human history, soldiers training, military exercises, and what looked like footage from action movies and video games. "Your species," Zach Still paused, all 4 of his eyes blinking rapidly. "Your capacity for warfare terrifies us." The human delegates looked at each other in confusion. Humanity had its problems, yes, but they had been making progress. Wars were becoming less frequent, and global cooperation was at an all-time high. "These images," Zach Still continued, pointing to a scene of Marines training in the desert, "show your warriors continuing to fight even when injured. They keep moving forward despite pain that would stop any rational being. And here," he showed a clip from what everyone recognized as a Hollywood movie, but the aliens clearly thought was real. "Your soldiers charge into certain death without hesitation." Chen tried to interrupt, to explain about movies and training exercises, but Zach Still wasn't finished. "The Galactic Council has been monitoring thousands of species for millions of years. We have never seen anything like humans. Your soldiers train for war even in times of peace. You create simulations of battle for entertainment. Your children play games about combat." The alien leader's voice grew even more serious. "We are here to warn you. The galaxy is watching Earth with great fear. Many council members believe you should be contained, not welcomed into the galactic community. They think your species is too dangerous to be allowed to spread among the stars." Chen looked around the room at his fellow delegates. Their faces showed a mix of shock, confusion, and surprisingly, some amusement. How could they explain to these advanced aliens that they had completely misunderstood human nature? But before he could speak, Zach Still raised all 4 of his hands in a gesture of peace. "We came to warn you, and to understand. Help us understand why your species seems to live for war, when the rest of us only fight when we must." 6 months after first contact, Sarah Martinez stood at the window of humanity's first space station embassy, watching alien ships pass by. The massive structure, Galactic Hub Station 7, was supposed to be a place of connection between species. Instead, it had become a daily reminder of how isolated humans were in the galaxy. She sighed as another trade ship changed its course to avoid coming too close to the human section. As Earth's chief trade negotiator, she had faced more closed doors than open ones. "Ambassador Chen wants to see you," her assistant said from behind her. Something about another rejected trade agreement. In Chen's office, the ambassador looked tired. The past months had aged him visibly. "The Blue Scales have canceled our mining partnership," he said, not even looking up from his desk. "They claim their workers are too afraid to work alongside humans." Sarah dropped into a chair. "That's the third deal this month. Do they still think we're going to suddenly attack them?" "Worse." Chen pushed a tablet across his desk. "Take a look at this. It's our official classification in the Galactic database." The screen showed a simple entry. Humans, Class X combat species. Warning: extreme caution advised. Shows signs of constant warfare preparation even in peacetime. Only previous Class X species destroyed themselves or their worlds through uncontrolled violence. "This is ridiculous," Sarah said, putting the tablet down harder than she meant to. "We've tried explaining about movies and training exercises. Why won't they listen?" A soft chime announced a visitor. A tall, blue-skinned alien named Crix entered the office. Unlike most aliens, Crix actually talked to humans. He worked as a cultural researcher and had been trying to understand humanity. "I might have found something interesting," Crix said, his translation device making his voice sound musical. "I've been studying your Earth's entertainment broadcasts. These action movies you make. No other species creates stories about combat. It's unique to humans." "That's just entertainment," Sarah started to explain, but Crix held up one of his 4 hands. "Yes, but why do you need to be entertained by conflict? Why do your children play war games? Why do your peaceful people train for battle?" His large eyes blinked rapidly. "The Council thinks it's because violence is central to your nature." Chen stood up and walked to his office window. The space station's rings spun slowly in the distance, carrying thousands of alien ships and visitors. None came to the human section anymore. "We need to do something," he said finally. "Earth is counting on us to build relationships out here. Our whole future in space depends on it." Sarah looked at the latest trade reports on her tablet. Earth needed these agreements. Their technology was far behind most species. They had so much to learn, but no one would teach them. "Maybe," she said slowly, "we're approaching this wrong. Instead of trying to convince them we're not dangerous, we should help them understand why we prepare the way we do." Crix made a chirping sound that his translator didn't catch. "The Council fears what they don't understand. If you could help them understand." A message flashed on all their screens, interrupting their conversation. Sarah read it and felt her heart skip a beat. "There's been an incident at Docking Bay 17, she said. "A group of Thoraxian warriors and human peacekeepers. This isn't good." Chen was already heading for the door. "Let's hope this doesn't confirm everything they fear about us." Docking Bay 17 was chaos when Ambassador Chen arrived. A crowd of aliens had gathered at a safe distance, their various recording devices pointed at the scene. In the center of the bay stood 4 Thoraxian warriors, each over 8 feet tall with armor-plated skin and sharp claws. They faced 3 human peacekeepers who looked tiny in comparison. "What happened?" Chen asked the station's security chief, a jellyfish-like creature floating in a gravity bubble. "The Thoraxians say the humans insulted their honor," the chief's translator crackled. "But that's not the real problem. Look at the human stance." Chen watched as the human peacekeepers maintained calm positions, hands open and visible. Standard de-escalation training. But the Thoraxians were backing away, their warrior claws extended in what looked like fear. "They're doing something wrong," one Thoraxian growled through their translator. "No species acts this calm before combat. They must have hidden weapons or tactics we don't know about." Officer Maria Rodriguez, the lead human peacekeeper, kept her voice steady. "We are not looking for combat. We're here to talk and resolve this peacefully." This seemed to frighten the Thoraxians even more. Their leader, marked by red stripes on his armor plates, raised all 4 arms in a defensive position. See, they refused to show aggression. This is the legendary human battle deception we were warned about. Sarah Martinez pushed through the crowd to stand beside Chen. "This is getting out of hand," she whispered. "The Thoraxians are the galaxy's most respected warriors. If they show fear of us..." A young Thoraxian warrior suddenly moved forward, probably trying to prove his bravery. Officer Rodriguez shifted her weight slightly, a simple defensive move taught in basic training. The reaction was immediate. The Thoraxian leader roared, "Combat stance. They're using their elite fighting techniques." To everyone's surprise, the mighty Thoraxian warriors began retreating. Their leader's voice shook as he spoke. "We will not fall for human war strategies today. The legends speak truth. They are too dangerous to fight." The crowd watched in stunned silence as the Thoraxians backed away, then turned and ran, their heavy footsteps echoing through the docking bay. "What legends?" Rodriguez asked, finally relaxing their stance. "We were just following standard peacekeeping protocols." Crix emerged from the crowd, his blue skin pulsing with excited colors. "This is fascinating. The Thoraxians interpreted your calm behavior as a sign of supreme combat confidence. In their culture, only the most dangerous warriors can stay peaceful in the face of challenge." Videos of the incident were already spreading across the galactic network. Chen watched the reactions on his tablet with growing concern. The headlines were getting worse by the minute. "Human warriors, DFEETHORAXIAN elite, without moving. Mysterious, human battle techniques, CAUSEFEARD to flee. Galactic Council CL's emergency meeting about human threat." Sarah looked at the retreating crowd of aliens, now keeping even more distance from the humans. "We tried to prevent a fight, and somehow that made us seem more dangerous." Chen rubbed his temples. "Our training to avoid conflict is being seen as proof that we're deadly warriors. The more we try to show we're peaceful, the more threatening we appear," Rodriguez finished. "Because what kind of species trains for peace?" Crix's translator made a sound like laughter. "Perhaps it's time to show them your training facilities. Let them see these deadly techniques for themselves." Chen looked at Sarah. They both had the same thought. This could either solve everything or make it much, much worse. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the massive archive chamber of the Galactic Library, surrounded by holographic displays of alien battle records. Her research partner, Zixtel, floated beside her on gravity pads, his crystalline body catching the light from the displays. "That's the last war record from the Mantis Empire," Zixtel said, his translation crystal pulsing with each word. 3 battles in their entire history, each lasting less than a day. Total casualties, 42. Sarah checked the date. This empire lasted 10,000 years, and they only had 3 battles. Yes. Zixtel moved to another display. "Most species fight only when they must. The Thoraxians, who you met last week, have had 12 battles in their history. They are considered unusually aggressive for this." Sarah thought about human history, with its countless conflicts and constant military preparations. No wonder the galaxy feared them. She pulled up another hologram, this one showing the peaceful butterfly people of Nexus 7. "Here's something interesting," she said. "The butterfly people had one battle 3 centuries ago. They lost half their warriors because they had no combat training. The survivors had to learn to fight during the actual battle." Zixtel's crystal body flickered, showing surprise. "Yes, that's normal. Why would anyone train for battle before it happens? That's like preparing for death before you're dying." Sarah walked to the center of the room where a large hologram showed Earth's latest military training exercise. 1,000 soldiers moved in perfect coordination, practicing tactics with harmless weapons. "Zixtel," she said slowly, "how do other species learn to fight?" "They don't," he replied simply. "When fighting is needed, they fight. Many die because they don't know how. But that's nature's way." Sarah pulled up more records, her excitement growing. "Look at these casualty rates. When other species fight, they lose almost half their warriors. But in Earth's recent conflicts, the death rates are much lower. Zixtel finished, his crystal body pulsing with understanding. Because you already know how to fight before the battle begins. Sarah quickly sent a message to Ambassador Chen. Found something important. Humans aren't more violent. We're better prepared. Other species never practice combat. They think our training is combat. The response came quickly. The Galactic Council is meeting tomorrow about the Thoraxian incident. Can you prove this? Sarah looked at the mountain of evidence they'd gathered. Countless records showed the same pattern. Species after species fighting without preparation, suffering massive losses and even minor conflicts. Zixtel, she said, remember how shocked you were when I showed you a paintball game? You thought humans were crazy to practice combat for fun. Yes, he chimed. My species would never imagine pretending to fight. It would be like pretending to die. Sarah started gathering the most important records. That's exactly it. The galaxy thinks we're obsessed with war, but really, you're obsessed with surviving it. Zixtel finished. His crystal body glowed brighter. Your training, your games, your combat simulations, they're not about wanting to fight. They're about making sure we survive when we have to. Sarah said, now we just have to convince the council of that. As they prepared to leave the archive chamber, an urgent message flashed across all screens. Emergency alert. Unknown hostile force detected entering galaxy. All council members report immediately. Sarah and Zixtel looked at each other. Their discovery about human nature was about to become very important, faster than anyone expected. The Galactic Council chamber was packed with representatives from 100 different species. The massive room hummed with nervous energy as Ambassador Chen and Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation, prepared to present their findings. The emergency alert about the unknown threat had everyone on edge. But the council insisted on addressing the human problem first. High Counselor Zixtel's liquid metal skin rippled as he spoke. Before we discuss the incoming threat, we must decide about the humans. The Thoraxian incident proves they are too dangerous to. Actually, Sarah interrupted, stepping forward. That's exactly what we need to talk about. We've discovered something important about humans and warfare. She activated the chamber's holographic system. Images filled the air. Children playing with water guns, soldiers doing training exercises, people playing video games, and actors filming battle scenes. These are the images that terrified you, Sarah said. But look closer. What do you notice about these battles? A bird-like council member clicked its beak. No one is dying. Are these fights ceremonial? No, Sarah smiled. They're not real fights at all. They're practice, games, entertainment, ways to learn without anyone getting hurt. Murmurs filled the chamber. Zixtel leaned forward, all four eyes focused on the images. You mean, these warriors aren't actually fighting? Ambassador Chen stepped forward. That's right. Humans don't love war. We just believe in being prepared. Those soldiers you saw training, they hope they never have to use those skills in real combat. Sarah brought up new holograms, showing the research from the archives. Look at these numbers. When other species fight, they lose half their warriors or more. But humans, our casualty rates are much lower because we train before we ever face real danger. A crystalline being chimed in. But why practice killing? Why prepare for something you hope never happens? Do you have emergency plans for your ships? Chen asked. Do you do safety drills? Practice emergency procedures? Of course, several council members answered at once. That's what our combat training is, Sarah explained. We don't practice because we want to fight. We practice so that if we have to fight, fewer people die. The chamber erupted in discussion. Sarah could see understanding beginning to dawn on many faces. Then she showed them something else. Footage of human emergency responders training for disasters. See, we don't just train for combat. We prepare for every kind of crisis. Fires, floods, earthquakes, accidents, anything that could harm our people. Fascinating, Zack Still said, his metallic skin reflecting the hologram lights. You're not a species obsessed with war. We're a species obsessed with survival, Chen finished. With protecting our people. With being ready for anything. Just then, the chamber's emergency alert system blared to life. A massive hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing hundreds of dark ships entering the galaxy. The unknown hostile force, a council member whispered. They're approaching faster than we thought. Sarah and Chen exchanged looks. The timing couldn't have been better, or worse. Zack Still stood, his liquid metal form towering over the chamber. Perhaps we have been afraid of the wrong thing about humans. We feared their readiness for war. But now, as an unknown enemy approaches, he turned to face Chen and Sarah. Maybe what we should really be asking is, will humans teach us how to be ready too? The void swarm struck 3 worlds before anyone could react. They were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, living ships that moved like hungry predators through space. They didn't communicate or make demands. They simply attacked, consumed resources, and moved on to the next target. In the Galactic Council's emergency command center, chaos reigned. Holograms showed the destruction of colonies and space stations. The Thoraxian warriors, previously so proud, had lost 2 battles in less than a day. The mighty crystalline fleet was scattered after their first encounter with the swarm. How many ships do we have left? High Counselor Zack Still asked, his metallic skin dulled with stress. About 60% of our combined fleets, a bird-like admiral reported. But they're disorganized. Nobody knows how to fight an enemy like this. We've lost more ships to panic and friendly fire than to the actual enemy. Ambassador Chen watched the displays with growing concern. Then he noticed something interesting about the swarm's attack pattern. He'd seen something similar before, in historical records of ancient Earth predators hunting in packs. Dr. Sarah, he called across the room. Does this remind you of something? Sarah studied the movement patterns and her eyes widened. Yes, it's like the wolf pack hunting strategies we studied in history class. They're using the same patterns, just in 3 dimensions. Chen turned to Zack Still. High Counselor, we've seen this before. Not in space, but on Earth. We know how to counter these tactics. How? Zack Still demanded. Your species has never fought enemies like these. No, Sarah said, but we've studied similar hunting patterns. And more importantly, we know how to quickly train others to fight as a team. She pulled up new holograms, showing Earth's military training programs. Look, we can teach your ships to work together. We have simulator programs that can prepare them for combat without risking lives. We can turn this around, but you have to trust us. The council chamber fell silent. Centuries of fearing human combat expertise, and now they needed that very thing to survive. Zack Still's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. How long would this training take? The swarm is attacking now. We start immediately, Chen said firmly. Earth's top military instructors are already on their way. We'll convert your holographic chambers into combat simulators. Your ships can practice formations and tactics safely before facing real combat. And the best part, Sarah added, is that we've already programmed the simulations. We can input the swarm's hunting patterns and let your crews practice against them virtually. A Thoraxian commander stepped forward, his armor still scared from the recent battle. My warriors ran from humans last week because we feared their training. Now you offer to teach us. Yes, Chen said simply. Because that's what humans do. We don't train for war because we love it. We train so that when danger comes, we know how to protect each other. Suddenly, new alerts flashed across the screens. The void swarm had changed direction. They were heading toward more populated systems. We don't have much time, Sarah said, already accessing Earth's training databases. But we can do this. Humans have been preparing for the unknown our entire history. Now we can help others do the same. Zack still stood tall, his metallic skin beginning to shine again with renewed hope. Then let us begin. Show us how humans prepare for war, so that we might all survive it. The massive simulation chamber hummed with energy as thousands of alien crews trained in virtual battles against the Void Swarm. What was once the Galactic Council's grand meeting hall had been transformed into humanity's largest teaching space. Holographic ships filled the air as crews learned to work together. Captain Maria Rodriguez watched from the control center as a mixed group of Thoraxian and crystalline ships practiced defensive formations. Just 2 weeks ago, these species had barely spoken to each other. Now they moved together like a single unit. "They're learning faster than we expected," Sarah said, standing beside her. "Turns out when you remove the fear of failure, everyone learns better." Rodriguez nodded. "That's why humans use simulations. You can make mistakes without dying. You can try new tactics without risk." On the main screen, they watched as the alien ships successfully defended against a simulated swarm attack. The Thoraxian commander's voice boomed through the speakers. "Victory, and not one ship lost." "See," Sarah smiled. 2 weeks ago, they thought practicing for battle was strange. Now they celebrate saving lives through preparation. Ambassador Chen entered the control room, looking tired but happy. "The latest reports are good. The real Void Swarm attacked the Centauri sector yesterday. Our trained ships drove them back with minimal losses." The room erupted in cheers. But Chen wasn't finished. "There's more. The Council has officially changed humanity's classification. We're no longer listed as a Class X combat species." He pulled up the new classification on the main screen. "Humans, guardian species, notable traits, masters of preparation and training, developed advanced simulation technology, specializes in teaching defensive tactics and survival skills." Sarah read it twice to be sure. They'd really changed it. After all that fear. "They did more than that," Chen said. He gestured to the side screen, where various alien ships were arriving at the station. "These are educational delegations from 50 different worlds. They don't want just combat training anymore. They want to learn how humans prepare for everything. Natural disasters, medical emergencies, space accidents." Rodriguez watched as a group of young crystalline cadets celebrated completing their first successful simulation. Their joy at learning to protect others without risk reminded her of her own training days. "You know what's funny?" she said. "Humans didn't develop training and simulations because we're special. We did it because we're fragile. We can't regrow limbs like the Thoraxians. We can't survive in space like the crystallines. We had to learn to be careful, to practice, to prepare. And now that very weakness has become our greatest strength," Chen added. "Because we had to learn to prepare, we can teach others to do the same." Sarah pulled up the latest statistics. Casualty rates across the galaxy had dropped by 60% in battles against the Void Swarm. Species that once fought alone now work together, protecting each other using human training techniques. "We're not teaching them to be warriors," she realized. "We're teaching them to be guardians, like us." A new alert flashed on the screen. Another Void Swarm attack was coming. But this time, nobody panicked. Instead, the alien crews calmly moved to their stations, ready to use their training. Chen smiled as he watched them prepare. "The galaxy feared us because they thought we lived for war. Now they understand the truth." "And what's that?" Rodriguez asked. "Humans don't live for war," he said. "We live to protect those who can't protect themselves. And now we can teach the galaxy to do the same." 3 months after the first Void Swarm attack, the Galactic Council gathered again in their chamber. But this time, it wasn't for emergency meetings or crisis management. Today was the opening ceremony of the first Galactic Defense Academy. Ambassador Chen stood at the podium, looking out at the most diverse crowd the Council had ever seen. Young cadets from 100 species sat together, no longer separated by fear or mistrust. The very things that had once made aliens afraid of humans now brought them together. 1 year ago, Chen began. Humanity was classified as too dangerous to join the galactic community. Today, we stand here as teachers, as protectors, as friends. In the front row, Dr. Sarah watched with pride. Beside her sat Zixtel, who had helped discover the truth about human nature, and Captain Rodriguez, who had turned that truth into practical training programs. The Void Swarm taught us all an important lesson. Chen continued. The galaxy is not always a safe place, but we don't have to face those dangers unprepared or alone. On the massive screens behind him, footage played of recent victories against the swarm. Ships from different species moved in perfect coordination, using tactics they had practiced hundreds of times in simulations. Their casualty rates were now the lowest in galactic history. High Counselor Zach still floated up to join Chen at the podium, his metallic skin gleaming. When we first met humans, we saw their preparation as a sign of bloodthirst. We were wrong. They prepare not because they love war, but because they value life. The Academy itself was a testament to this new understanding. Training rooms filled with advanced simulators allowed students to practice everything from space combat to rescue operations. Medical bays taught emergency response. Engineering labs ran disaster scenarios. Sarah smiled as she watched a young Thoraxian cadet helping a crystalline student adjust their simulation controls. 6 months ago, these species barely spoke to each other. Now they learned together, trained together, protected each other. But the Academy isn't just about defense, Chen explained. Humans don't just prepare for war. We prepare for life. For accidents, for disasters, for any challenge that might threaten those we care about. The screens showed new images, alien crews practicing emergency procedures, medical teams learning human first aid techniques, engineers studying Earth's disaster response methods. The Void Swarm remains a threat, Zach still said, but they no longer inspire terror, because now we know how to be ready. Now we know how to protect each other. Rodriguez stood and joined them at the podium. When I first trained alien crews, they thought our simulation programs were strange. They asked why we practiced things that haven't happened yet. Now they understand what humans have always known, that the best way to face a crisis is to prepare for it together. The ceremony ended with something never before seen in the council chamber, a standing ovation from every species present. The sound of different appendages clapping, clicking, and chiming filled the air. As the first classes began, Sarah watched the young cadets enter their training rooms. She thought about how far they'd come, from being feared as warriors to being respected as teachers. You know what the best part is? She said to Chen as they watched the Academy come to life. We didn't have to change who we are. The galaxy just finally understood why we prepare so much. Chen nodded, and in understanding us, they learned something important about themselves. What's that? Sarah asked. That the strongest warrior isn't the one who loves to fight, Chen smiled. It's the one who knows how to prevent the fight in the first place.